So if you're dealing with chemical sensitivity issues, know that this can be a significant life-altering situation that can make some people where they can't even leave the house. And maybe you've even had a doctor dismiss this or tell you, oh, that's not a real thing. And maybe you told your doctor, well, my dislike for you is a real thing. And the fact that I hear from so many people whose doctors just dismiss this or tell them that it's in their head, it really makes me a little bit angry because 20 years ago I had a significant chemical sensitivity issue, and at that time I wasn't able to talk at all, and I would have to write on a notepad to one of the grocery store employees, can you go down that aisle and get me this dish liquid? Because I couldn't even stand to go down the cleaning aisle. I couldn't be around those products and smell that because it would just cause a lot of trouble for me. So if this is an issue for you, I understand where you're at. And I'm going to explain the most common underlying causes, and the weird thing is that they're going to make sense. I know, it's going to be crazy. Just understand that I'm not a doctor, I'm not giving you any medical advice, I'm just a schmuck comic turned nutrition author because 23 different doctors couldn't help me get my voice back and I had to dig for my own answers. So now I teach what I learned in my books and courses. And the weird thing is that all the information that helped me fix my digestive issues and get my voice back and fix these chemical sensitivities, since then I've found all that information in the medical literature, and yet none of those 23 doctors knew that information. So I'm going to share some studies with you, and it's okay if I stand in front of these. You don't need to see them. I'll put links in the description below to all these studies, and we'll put them up on the board so that you can see them when we're talking about them. But this is just going to be an educational video that'll give you the tools you need to ask your doctor the right questions, or maybe to even help you understand that maybe it's time to get a new doctor. A lot of people don't know that they're allowed to fire their doctor. You don't work for your doctor, they work for you. I had one client tell me that, I took these studies into my doctor and I said, I told my husband that you were an idiot, and when you read these, you'll get to see how fun it was for me to tell my husband that I was right again. I love it when that happens. So this is a real issue, and the problem is that the symptom variation can really be wide, and it's a lot of symptoms that you wouldn't think, a lot of people are like, oh, well, let's look in your sinuses and see what's going wrong there if you can't stand these smells. But a lot of the symptoms are like just fatigue or headaches or, oh man, this all swells up and I get these skin issues. There's a lot of things that can really be different from person to person. And when they run blood tests, we're going to look at this study here for diagnostic markers of multiple chemical sensitivity. And they go through and let us know that most people with this issue, when they run like CBCs or blood tests or even EKGs, and the common test that most doctors are going to run, they come up normal, and all their tests come up normal, and the doctor's like, oh, the great news is this is normal, and the other great news is that I know somebody at the loony bin that I can introduce you to. Because they think that this is all in your head and it's a psychosomatic situation, but this paper here explains that that's not the situation. And when we understand how the blood works, and the blood is this compensatory fluid, which means that the body's going to beg, borrow, and steal from all these other places to keep the blood chemistry in line. It's that important. So blood tests can come back normal because the body's taking a lot of this trouble and shoving it into other areas. So this study here on the prevalence of multiple chemical sensitivities, a population-based study in the southeastern United States, went over some situations where they looked at this in Atlanta and also in California, and they found that about 12 to 15% of the population has this issue. So you are not alone. A lot of people deal with this. I was one of those people. And then this paper here that I'll link below from the Journal of Allergy and Clinical Immunology on Do No Harm, multiple chemical sensitivity is not psychological. And that's what most people in the medical world are going to call this, multiple chemical sensitivity. They might call this environmental illness or idiopathic environmental intolerances. And the idiopathic just means like, well, I don't know why that's happening, but that's happening, so we'll give it a name for you. So you'll hear different names for this, but this paper here lets us know that this is not a psychosomatic situation. And you may also hear from people saying, oh, this is about adrenal fatigue, and they may see adrenal fatigue with it a lot, but I don't view this as an adrenal problem. Usually when there's a lot of things going wrong in the body will call on the adrenals to help out, and if they're doing that too much, then they'll have a fatigue issue going on. But the available advice out there for this problem is usually, well, just avoid those things. Stay away from those things. And I hear from people that say, I can't go into an environment that is not a scent-free environment. So any environment they go in that has a smell, like a coffee shop, or I can't pump my own gas, or I couldn't go down the grocery aisle. So the advice is just stay away from that stuff. And the treatments are zero. You know, most of the medications that someone's going to give you are going to be, here, this is for the headaches that you're getting, or this is for the nausea that you're having. So there isn't any real treatment. So when we want to understand what's really creating this issue, we need to understand bodily overwhelm. So basically, this is the body here. This is all the body and what goes into the body. So we want to view this water in this jug as toxins that have accumulated in the body. And this spigot here is how the body gets rid of those toxins. So as long as this is flowing out, these will go down, and as stuff comes in, the toxins are going to go out and everything's going to be okay. The problem is some people's spigot is not working correctly. There are problems with their detox pathways that we'll talk about in a second, but now things are not leaving as well. And there are other folks who the toxins are coming in or accumulating faster than the body can get rid of them. So that's pretty much the whole situation. It's just the body's ability to get rid of these toxins out of the spigot, or your ability to reduce the amount of toxins that are accumulating. So when we want to understand this a little bit better, we need to think about the fact that there are a lot more chemical pollutants in our bodies these days. There's things in our house that are cleaning products. There's shampoos that we use. There's stuff sprayed in our yard or even in our neighborhood or in our town. All these chemicals that we're exposed to, and the body is made to filter those things out. So it's usually not a problem for most people. But we also have to think about biological factors. There's also toxins in the body that are produced in the body by invaders or our inability to process our foods correctly, or because of the food that we're eating and all the junk coming in on that food. So these are problems for the body. So to understand why someone might not be able to detox this correctly, we need to understand that the liver filters junk out of the body. Most people know that. Most people don't know that the liver takes a lot of that junk and it puts it into the bile. Bile is this soapy substance that it produces, and then it sends down to the gallbladder where it stores and concentrates that bile so it can be more effective. And then the bile comes down here into the duodenum when acidic product leaves the stomach, and it helps to neutralize that. It helps us emulsify our dietary fats. It does a lot of things to help the digestive process so that we can access nutrients in the foods that we're eating. But as the body carries this bile through the intestinal tract, it's also carrying those toxins, so the toxins can go out the back door when we poop like a champion. The problem is a lot of people, for a wide variety of reasons, have their bile become too thick and sticky to flow correctly. And when that happens, now those toxins are not going through the system. They're not going out the back door. They're getting reabsorbed into the system, and now the liver's got to filter them out all over again. The liver's like, hey, I did this already. Why are you giving me this again? And then it gets overwhelmed, and then toxins accumulate, and now this jug is getting more filled up. It's filling up faster than it can be removed, and this spigot is kind of churning off since the main detox pathway is kind of broken. The body has other ways to get things out. It has all these little processes, and sometimes a lot of those processes depend on nutrients coming into the body, and when this digestive process isn't working, either side of that, the stomach acid or the bile flowing, it's harder for us to access those nutrients. So that can turn off even more detox pathways. That's why a lot of people see a lot of skin issues with this chemical sensitivity issue, because the body's trying to push stuff out through the pores because all these detox pathways are a little bit broken. So this is a really big deal. And we hear from people all the time that, oh, I had my gallbladder removed because it wasn't flowing correctly and I got all these stones in there. Well, that happens when things aren't flowing the way they're supposed to. This gets too thick and the gallbladder keeps concentrating it, and then somebody yanks out the gallbladder and tosses it in the trash. So we need to understand that this pathway is really important, and the ability to detox is really important. We also need to understand that we have invaders that can come into the system and create toxins in our body. A very common issue is to see mold illness with this chemical sensitivity problem. When you're talking about mold illness, well, that's something else somebody might tell you is just in your head. So we'll put a link in the description below for our video on surprising insights on mold illness. But this is really common because the mold put out these mycotoxins that start to accumulate in the body faster than a person has the ability to get rid of them. And these mycotoxins, some people feel like have these structures and ability to kind of restrict the body's ability to get rid of them. So they accumulate even faster. So that can be a really big problem. It's really common to see some type of digestive overgrowth here in this digestive system, either in the stomach here or in the small intestine where we really shouldn't have bacteria. Most of our good bacteria should be here in the large intestine, but it's really common to see a SIBO issue or small intestinal bacterial overgrowth, or like an H. pylori or some other infection in the stomach there. And when that's the case, they're putting out these biotoxins. They put out junk just like we put out junk as a person. So that's accumulating in the system, and especially if these detox pathways are turned off, that's going to accumulate a lot faster and create a lot of trouble for that person. And this type of situation can create a higher sensitivity for some people or a lower threshold. So a lot of people will be exposed to some type of, chemical pollutant in the air, and their reaction can be immediate. And that's just because the body is already overwhelmed and it's viewing this as a threat that's going to create real trouble for the body. And we have to keep in mind that these toxins can be coming from a variety of areas. Maybe someone's drinking tap water and they're getting a lot of chemicals and junk that way. Maybe someone has like a lot of heavy metal issues that they were exposed to at some point. Maybe they had, metal fillings in their mouth or some kind of dental work that was not optimal, and they could have an exposure to a lot of toxins that way. Maybe a person is, eating a lot of foods that's sprayed with toxins. Another thing to think about is that when we're looking at these digestive malfunctions that we've talked about, when there are digestive malfunctions and the body can't break down foods correctly, now we can create food sensitivity issues. And now the body is viewing this food as an invader. When we get some type of leaky gut issue, which is really common with these mold, yeast, fungal type invaders that we were talking about, they seem to have the ability to kind of bore holes in that intestinal lining. And then if someone's not breaking down their food, then food is getting through these bigger holes in the intestinal lining, and the body's viewing that as an invader and creating these antibodies that kind of go to war against this food. So now all the chemicals that come from these antibodies going to war against this food also need to be detoxed. So now everything that we're eating could be creating trouble. So this has the ability to really snowball for some people when we start to see immune functions like food sensitivity to something that you just think, oh, I'm just eating something healthy, I'm doing a good thing, but it's really creating a big burden for the body. When you add all these things together, it can create some significant symptoms. And for a lot of people, it's not just one of these things. Sometimes it's multiple things going on, which really has the ability to magnify the experience that they're having. This paper on multiple chemical sensitivity, it's time to catch up to the science, says some individuals have more effective detoxification systems than others, and this helps to explain inter-individual variations in disease susceptibility. Inter-individual genetic variation in endogenous detoxification defense systems results in some individuals having lower capacity to metabolize xenobiotics and greater oxidative stress, thereby magnifying the toxic effects of long-term exposure and potentiating subsequent disease development. So they're helping us understand that this is really going to vary from person to person. So two people that could be exposed to these same toxins could have wildly different situations. And an interesting paper here on epidemiological association between multiple chemical sensitivity and birth by cesarean section showed that there was a high correlation between this, chemical sensitivity issue with people who were born to cesarean. And we just hear a lot about how this can be problematic because the baby is not exposed to all of the bacteria from the mother. So they have a harder time establishing a good gut flora, which can lead to a lot of dysbiosis and a lot of these overgrowth issues like we're talking about. So it's interesting that this study is showing this correlation as well. So when we're looking at improving this situation, what do? Well, you can see it really could be different from person to person, but it's pretty important to remove the insult. That's the first step. If you're living in some type of moldy situation, maybe you even have a mold colonized in your body and it's creating trouble that way. Maybe you were exposed to mold before, and you just need to figure out that you need to get rid of that situation in your body. Maybe you're living in some type of environment that has mold or some other chemical situation going on that you need to get away from. That could be very important. If there are heavy metals, that needs to be handled. And when we're looking at these overgrowth situations, a person can test for things like mold mycotoxins. They can test for an H. pylori situation or candida or some type of other yeast, mold, fungal overgrowth problem in their digestive tract to understand, is that a problem? That needs to be handled. If all these toxins are being produced in the body, how are you supposed to run from that? It's in your body. So we have a lot of videos on reducing issues like candida and H. pylori and all those kind of things. I'll put some links in the description below so you can see you're going to have some homework to do here. So you might want to bookmark this video so you can come back to this description and access other information that might be helpful in other videos. What we really want to know is bile flowing correctly. If the body can't detox, helping it detox the way that it wants to detox can really help that water jug get unfilled a little bit. That can really start to help a person feel a little bit better and increase their ability to tolerate some of these toxins. It wasn't like one day I walked into the grocery store and I just ran down the aisle yelling and screaming, woohoo! No, there was a time where I walked by and I was like, oh, that didn't bug me as much as I didn't walk like 10 feet around the aisle to get away from it. And I was like, oh, that didn't bug me. And then I just gradually, it just got less and less to where I could just go right down the aisle and get what I need. So reducing any type of overgrowth is going to be very important. Any type of digestive symptoms are important to kind of improve it, especially things like reflux or bloating or indigestion or constipation. Those are all signs that that stomach acid is not working correctly, and that's kind of the barrier that keeps all the bad guys. They're supposed to die in an acid bath when they come in on the food that we're eating. So it's important to have all those things working correctly. If you don't know how to do that, you probably have not seen any of our other videos. We talk about that in a lot of videos, but we'll put a link in the description below for our totally free digestion course that'll walk you through figuring out which aspects of digestion are not working correctly and steps you can take to improve that. And it also goes over this bile issue pretty well, and that'll help you figure out if that's a problem and things you can do to improve that. And we'll put a link in the description below for our video on 10 signs of poor bile flow. You can jump to that and kind of figure out, hey, is this a problem that I need to take care of? And if there are digestive malfunctions, and especially if there's an overgrowth, it's common to see a leaky gut issue that needs to be corrected so that all of the food is not being viewed as an invader and the body's going to war against that. That creates a lot of trouble. And a person might even need to do some type of elimination diet at first. When you create all these food sensitivity issues, there are some foods that very commonly create symptoms. And if you can remove those, a lot of people will start to feel better right away. So we'll put a link in the description below on videos on how to do an elimination diet if you need to check that out as well. So you can see there's a lot of things that might need to go wrong. But know that this here, I view that as a sign of significant issues going wrong in the body. It's usually not just one thing. There's usually an accumulation of multiple things creating enough trouble where I can't even fill my own gas because the fumes cause real trouble for me. So when that's the case, a person is not going to take a pill and fix that. They're going to have to do some work to fix some actual underlying causes. But the great news is that you can do it. We hear from people every day that improve issues like this. So it's going to take some effort, but knowing that you really can do it can be kind of fun to find out. And people ask me a lot what kind of doctor will help me with this the most, and I don't have advice for doctors, but a lot of times when there's underlying causes of issues creating something, a functional medicine doctor might be the best route to go to help you figure out the actual underlying cause for you. So just be sure to mark this video so you can go to the description and find the other videos or information that you feel is going to be most appropriate for your unique situation. And if you feel like you might be having some bile flow issues, jump over now and check out our video on 5 steps to improve bile flow so you can help the body start to detox the way that it should. I can't wait to hear about your results.